very much. I actually only make it 13:59, so I'll wait for my computer to tick over. Just in case. It's a long minute. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Julian Dean, Chair of the committee. A few housekeeping bits and pieces. We're not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building, which I assume is that side. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you to please ensure that mobile phones are switched off and ensure the volume on your laptop is muted. To ensure the members of this committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public but not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Members should ensure that they are present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on an item if you have not heard all of the debate. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak so those listening know who is speaking? I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. Rosemary, do you want to begin?
Yeah, Rosemary Dartnell, councillor for Colomont and Sutton.
Ed Potter, councillor for Leighton.
Carl Rowley, councillor for St Martin's. Brian Evans, councillor for St Martin's.
Gregory Ebbs, councillor for Whitchurch South.
Andy Davis, councillor for St Oswald.
Gary Groves, councillor for Wen and Wen Rural.
Vicky Moore, councillor for Otley and Meebrook.
Please.
Art Perry, senior planning officer.
Kelvin Hall, principal planning officer. Ollie Thomas, principal planning officer.
Mark Owen, councillor for Osprey South East.
Charlotte Morrison, planning and development services manager.
Thank you.
Idris Iqbal, solicitor.
Tim Ward, committee officer.
And I've already introduced myself, Councillor Julian Dean. So we have 2 apologies for absence. Councillor Rosie Radford being substituted for by Vicky Moore, and Councillor Adam Pfeiffer. Substitution is Rhys Brown. Thank you. Is that right? Rhys is not present. Okay. Councillor Andy Davis, are you substituting?
I believe not.
So you're substituting for Jamie Daniels, is that correct?
Okay.
Oh, I
That's
see.
my understanding of it. So I've replaced Jamie on this committee.
Okay, that's
Okay, that's fine.
That's correct, isn't it? Okay, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the previous meetings. To confirm minutes from the meetings held on 22nd of April and the 22nd of May. I think I was probably the only member of those. Ed, were you on that committee then previously? You weren't, were you? Yeah. Nevertheless, I do need. I'll propose those minutes. I do need a seconder for them, please. Thank you, Rosemary. Can we accept those minutes? It's a true and correct record. Thank you very much. Item 3, public questions. None have been received. We okay? Item 4, disclosable pecuniary interests. Do we have any interests to declare at this point? No, thank you. So we move on to item 5, proposed residential development, land northwest of Mile End roundabout, Shrewsbury Road, Oswestry. And the reference number is 2400719, and it's an outline application. Outline application for residential development on land off Shrewsbury Road, adjacent to Mile End roundabout, to include means of access and remediation. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I've got an interest in being a ward member, so I shall
Good at the back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, if we can move to the next slide, please. There's the red line boundary. You can see it at the junction of Mile End Roundabout, Shrewsbury Road to the west, A5, Shrewsbury Road to the south, A5 to the east. Next slide, please. So, view site photographs here. This is looking into the site. You probably can't make out from the back of the room, but over to the top is the part of the wider allocation, which is under construction. That was granted 2016, I believe, reserve matters. Next slide. So that's looking over onto the A5. There's the new footbridge connecting to Oswestry Innovation Park. Next slide. And then this is looking out onto Shrewsbury Road. That access point won't be where the site will be gained from in the future. It's just that's the current access into the field. The proposed vehicular access is further along Shrewsbury Road. Next slide. Thank you. So this is the indicative master plan that was submitted with the application. It won't form part of the approved plans, but it is useful to point out a few of the access points and connections. You'll see Shrewsbury Road along the south, along the southern boundary. The main vehicle access is in blue from there. And then there's two additional vehicle points, and they connect into the wider allocation that is Oswestry SUE. There's also a pink footpath on the eastern boundary that will connect into the footbridge and take you over the A5 to the Oswestry Innovation Park. And then the orange squiggle line surrounding the outside edge, that is an existing footpath. Next slide, please. So here's some zoom ins of the proposed access junction. They're proposing a ghost right turn on Shrewsbury Road into the site. There was a bit of a back and forth with National Highways as to what is the best access arrangement for this site due to the proximity of the Mile End Roundabout just off screen. National Highways are satisfied that what is being proposed is an adequate access for serving the future residential use. Next slide. And I've just included this slide because this is the next door site approved layout. So you can see the connection just here. That's it. That's the connection into the site. And this site is that development is building a new roundabout onto Shrewsbury Road. So there will be additional vehicle connection points off Shrewsbury Road. So there'll be two ways, if not more, because the allocation goes up northwards as well. But there will be additional vehicle points and cycle and pedestrian connections onto the adopted highway. And I think that's me done. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have any speakers for this item. So it's straight over to committee members. Any comments, committee members? Yes.
Councillor Andy Davis, you talked about the access onto the site, and there's an additional roundabout can be built there as well. How congested is that junction going to be? It's rather busy there at the moment, and with an additional road coming quite close to that junction as well. How's that going to increase congestion? Have you done any surveys on it?
So the applicant has submitted a transport assessment with their planning application. Because the next door site would have been a committed scheme at that time, it has factored into the new roundabout. So the transport assessment does confirm that the proposed access won't worsen congestion to a point that it's going to break the highway essentially. When we're testing as to highways reasons, what we're looking at is it going to result in a severe impact? And we're not saying it's going to be a betterment, but we're not saying it's going to be a severe impact on the highway network.
Yeah, I have some questions about the contamination on the site. Just really to ask about, there's the no dig barrier, 60 centimetres, and then the 10 centimetre stone sort of barrier beneath that. Is that a standard way of dealing with this kind of contamination?
But the future building plots. Sorry.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So this is the outline, but this is in the report saying that in order to protect human health from any residual contamination on the site once the houses are built,
Yeah.
that's what's proposed.
Yeah, so that is perfectly acceptable from our point of view, and our regulatory services have agreed that the remediation strategy is appropriate for what the contamination is on site.
Councillor Davis again. You state about the school places, additional school places, 7 early years, 23 primary, 11 secondary, 4 post 16, and 1 for a child's EHCP. Have those schools been contacted regarding the additional facilities they'll need for those children?
I don't know if they've been contacted, but the school places, they're not, whilst they've been highlighted as requirement as part of the proposed development, we don't currently know the bedroom numbers, so we don't know how many new families are actually going to be living on the site. And also the development is still liable, so SIL payments would fund any local infrastructure needs following capacity reviews that the SIL team undertake.
So the local schools have been consulted whether they've got capacity themselves to expand, whether they've got the staffing for these additional children?
So I haven't personally, and our education comments as part of the planning application, they come from a Department for Education standard pro forma. So you key in the likely number of dwellings and bedroom spaces, and then that churns out capacity of school places required. So we've not looked at local capacity in the immediate, because the SIL payments would then go direct to funding any education, new classrooms or schools if needed in the area.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so I had a query which so under the on page 10, Shropshire Council Highways comment, however, the drawings do not demonstrate an acceptable arrangement for walking and cycling. And as this is an outline application, it is about access points. And at the moment, it doesn't feel to me like we've taken sufficient account of the local cycling, walking and infrastructure strategy, which should include a route out to this site and into the site, enabling people, for example, not to have to tackle the roundabout as cyclists. Now, whilst I understand this is an outline application, the frustration I think for members will be that that wasn't addressed at the point when this site was originally allocated. And now we can't address it at this stage because it's an outline application. So effectively, it's being left to the full application to address something which is really an access point. So I suppose all I'm doing at this point is alerting the developer to the fact that it's something we would want to see. Is really good access. It's 10-minute cycle ride to the centre of Oswald Street. That ought to be a preferred travel option for people living on this site. And we need to see that safe, secure, and the sort of facility that children are going to be comfortable to use and that parents are going to be comfortable to let their children out to use. So I think that's really important that we see that when we see the full application. And it's disappointing that we're not at least commenting on Shropshire Highways comment in this report. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention really, and to alert the developers and the planners to the fact that we will want to see a really good travel plan. I recognise that there is a condition around travel planning, but I think we would have liked to, I certainly would have liked to see at this stage a bit more detail about how cyclist access, given that we've got all the detail about car access, I think we should have seen more detail about cycling access myself.
Yes. Could I just reiterate what you just said there? The whole connected plan between Innovation Park and Town Centre needs to take into consideration motor transport, cycle routes, so it's got safe transport right from Innovation Park right into town. So it would have been quite nice to see that built into this plan.
Just to come back on that one, within the applicant's transport statement, that they do have a section on pedestrian and cycle connections, and they do say that the site layout will incorporate a footway along the site frontage with Shrewsbury Road. This will provide a pedestrian and cycle connection to link into the proposed pedestrian and cycle bridge over the A5. It will also provide an improved connection to the off-road cycle route on the southern side of Shrewsbury Road. And I think the transport statement does go into a bit more detail about cycle at various points, but So the kind of constraint this site's dealing with is the proximity to the roundabout, and how pedestrians and cycles are kind of manoeuvred away from, you know, the roundabout traffic, because those two, as you exit Shrewsbury Road, you're still subject to 60-mile-an-hour speed limits. So it's not until you get adjacent the site does the speed limit reduce down to 40. So it does need to, you know, you can't have pedestrians and cyclists too close to the roundabout at those speeds. So it has been thought out as part of this scheme. But yes, reserve matters would be the point at which internal arrangements would come forward.
Thank you. And presumably there would be further opportunities based on the SIL contributions to look at enhancing the cycling infrastructure outside the site.
Yeah, that wouldn't be able to come through the planning application. It would have to be through the SIL infrastructure strategies. But if there's a demand or need for cycle infrastructure, then yes, that it could possibly come through SIL payments.
Mayor, did you ask to speak?
No,
Sorry. Yeah, and I wanted to say there is a need for that, and I think I'd also like to add to it to say that I think that with developments that are adjacent as well, cycling and pedestrian paths within all of those eventual neighbourhoods, I think is extremely desirable for, you know, good quality of life for those people who are going to be living there.
Thank you. So we've had an opportunity to ask questions and make comments. Does anybody have any wish to make a proposal? Thank you, Ed.
I'm happy to recommend approval of this application subject to the conditions and delegated responsibility to officers.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder. Thank you very much. Okay, that's the only proposal on the table, so I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you very much. It's unanimous. So moving on to the next item, which is item 6, proposed commercial development land to the south of Hazledine Way, Shrewsbury, 24/04742, VAR, variation of conditions attached to planning permission. I won't read that number again. Oh no, I will, because it's the original planning permission. So variation of conditions attached to 2203-877 full to permit an alternative care home development in lieu of the previously approved care home development, and 2, an amended single-storey retail leisure building in lieu of the previously approved 2-storey retail leisure building. So over to Mrs.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for reading out that description. I won't do that again. This relates to a planning permission which was granted in 2023. Building work has not yet commenced on it. So the application today is to change some of the design and layout elements of the approved planning permission. It's coming to committee because the site is owned by Shropshire Council. That's the specific reason why we're looking at it today, and a committee decision is required. So you can see the site location there. It's at the Millbrace roundabout on a site which was formerly a pitch and putt facility. It's the Millbrace retail park to the south, and then the residential area to the west, and then to the north east. And I assume you can't get rid of that window, that installation process window at all on that plan. To the northeast and east is I've got a golf course. Next one, please. So this is the currently approved site layout. The site is going to be delivered in 2 phases. The western side would be the commercial element, which would be a retail units at the northwest, the large white rectangle shaped building there, and then 2 drive-through units at the southwest, a KFC and a Starbucks. And then the other element would be a care home on the eastern side of the site. So that's the approved layout that we have In terms of the proposed layout, that's on the next slide. The main elements which are being changed is that the two-storey retail element, which is just underneath that window, that blue window there, is proposed to be a single-storey element, and then the care home would be reduced in scale, so it's in like an L-shaped rather than like an S-shaped building now. Other elements of the layout, such as the access in, the exit, the general circulation of traffic, and the like, and the drive-through units wouldn't be changed as part of the current application. Next one, please. This is the more detailed block plan of the care home, showing the care home and then the open space and car parking and access and the like around it. Next one. This is the elevations of the proposed care home. Next one. And the floor plans. Next. And this is a visual of what the care homes look like. And the next one. And again, this is the proposed landscaping and open space provision around the care home. Obviously, this will be amended because of the change to the layout and shape of the care home. Next one. And this is the proposed landscaping around the retail units and the commercial element. Next one. And the elevations of the retail unit, to say it's single story now rather than two story. Next. Again, the landscaping proposed around the perimeter of the site to provide a screening buffer to Otley Road to the south and Hazledine Way and the gyratory system. Next one. All right, okay, that's it. So as I say, permission's already been granted. It's an application to amend the design and layout. So those are the two elements really that are being presented to you today for consideration. It's not considered that the proposals raise any particular significant planning issues over and above what was permitted before. And in that respect, we're recommending that planning permission is granted for the variation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have two speakers. So first of all, we have the local member, Councillor Vicky Moore, to come to the microphone. Thank you, Vicky. You have 5 minutes, which will begin when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. Being a local and frequently using this road on a daily basis, while I note the application is in relation to reduced capacity, I can assure you that during rush hour, including school run traffic and also match days, there can be a long queue of traffic all the way back to the football ground along Otley Road. This will only increase, especially as people wanting to turn right could be prevented from doing so by cars coming from Bellevue, Meal Brace and Hazledine Way. The path is also currently used on a daily basis by school children, has consideration been given to their safety. I have also concerns regarding the retail outlets with potential for rubbish and antisocial behaviour. On a smaller scale, I have numerous residents in Sutton Farm reporting to me that the shop bins are currently full. Are we happy the plans include enough bins for the footfall, especially as I can imagine large numbers of people using the retail outlets on match days, which also raises further concerns around safety and people crossing the road. Thank you.
And would we go straight to the agent and then you comment? Yes. So Tracy Spencer, yeah. And Tracy, you have 3 minutes from when you start to speak. That's fine. The right hand button.
Right, well, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Spencer and I'm the agent on behalf of the applicant. I'm here on behalf of both Cardwell Properties and L&T Care Developments. Cardwell are the prospective developers of the retail commercial side of the scheme, and L&T are the prospective developers of the care home. As the officers pointed out, this is a variation application under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act, and we're seeking approval to vary the conditions of the previously granted scheme in August 23. For a similar combination of uses and on a similar build form as the previously approved scheme. The prospective developer of the retail leisure side of the scheme are now proposing a single retail leisure building rather than two-storey previously approved, with a series of minor amendments and alterations to the approved layout. The alternative care home developer was previously involved in the scheme, granted permission for a large 80-bed care home, but ultimately withdrew their interest in delivering the approved scheme. L&T Care Developments were offered the opportunity to progress this site, and are now proposing that their care home design, but of a lesser scale, 66 bedrooms. In respect of both parts of the development, a similar but lesser scale is now proposed that will result in a reduced material impact, hence the reason for the application being submitted in the form of a variation. A full range of consultations have been carried out with no objections received from any of the consultees or from any members of the public. It's trusted that an approval this afternoon of the variation application will then prompt a full purchase of the land and commencement of the development in due course. In response to Councillor Moore's comments, to be fair, I couldn't hear quite a lot of them because of due to the microphone, but with regards to transport, this is a lesser impact to the previous scheme approved. With regards to bins and antisocial behaviour, as the operators of the care home, that's something that we would obviously be conscious of. We would be looking to make sure if these problems occur, they would be rectified. It's a home for our residents. We're here for the lifetime now. We're fully invested in the project, and it's something, we wouldn't want anybody with relatives having to encounter this behaviour. So we do everything in our capabilities to try and assist in those matters. So that's about it, I think I've got to say. So apologies, and thanks for listening, and I hope you can all support the application as approved.
Thank you very much. Back to the officer. Any comments on the speakers?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the comments from Councillor Moore, as I've mentioned, planning permission has already been granted for the scheme, and as part of that planning permission being issued, it was considered acceptable in terms of the amount of car parking provision and the impact on the local area in terms of footfall and traffic. In relation to the current application, it is expected that the demand for the retail unit will be smaller because it's a smaller building, and the first floor is not going to be developed as a gym, and also that the care home as well as a smaller development, and therefore again the demand for traffic and would be less. So I think in terms of what members are looking at today, I don't think that this particular application raises issues in respect of those matters that need to be reconsidered as part of this current application, given that they've already been permitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee.
Councillor Rosemary Dartnell. I'm very familiar with this site. It used to be in the area that I represented. The question I have about transport and traffic is that I fully accept that it's a smaller retail unit, so there's going to be less footfall, and that the care home will be smaller. But there is in the document a comment that says the parking for the care home will be reduced per bed, so there'll be a sort of ratio reduction, so beyond a ratio reduction, if you like. So that does concern me, because traffic and queuing traffic is the major issue that this site faces. It's at a point of where a lot of things converge, and there is a lot of busy traffic at different times. And my concern is if there are fewer parking spaces per bed, that might create some sort of backing up of traffic.
My understanding is that the number of car parking spaces has been reduced proportionately to the number of beds, rather than there'll be fewer per bed. The other thing that I would add is that the applications also obviously has been looked at by our highways team. They're comfortable with the amount of parking provision being provided. It's not anticipated that a care home itself would create a significant degree of traffic, given the nature of the inhabitants, and without a particular concern being raised by the highways officer. Officers are content that the amount of parking provision is adequate for the development.
Thank you. The report says the number of car parking spaces per bed has been reduced. So it's a change in the ratio, a reduction in the ratio per bed. So as a smaller care home, you'd expect fewer spaces, but it's per bed, the reduction in the report.
Is that in the transport statement?
Sorry, it's in the highways statement. I'll just have a look at the transport.
It's confusing, isn't it? Because it also says in 6.4.1, number of car parking spaces at the care home has been reduced in proportion to its reduced size. So it seems to say both.
Bit more, sorry. So this, and then one more. So this is the parking proposed for the approved site. And then the next one is the parking proposed for the current site. And I think the report mentions the number of bedrooms proposed reduces from 80 to 66, and that looks to me like a proportionate reduction in parking spaces compared to the approved scheme. Well, this is the right-hand side part of the development.
So, yeah, so it's a reduction from 80 to 66.
A reduction in beds from 80 to 66, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's so can I just go on a little bit further with this? So at the moment, there's one way in and one way out on the site, and there is the need to construct an exit onto Hazledine Way. So that's going to the north of the site, isn't it? So the wording in the report says that it's therefore recommended that the exit out of the site onto Hazledine Way is constructed at the earliest opportunity. Is it possible to make that a condition, that it should be constructed so that there is a way out once that it doesn't come 2 years after it's fully occupied, for example? Because the problem is backing traffic backing up onto Sodyllt Road and then onto the roundabout.
Yeah, the proposals at the moment obviously provide for exit onto Hazledine Way to the north once it's been constructed, but also an exit onto Sodyllt Road as well via the underpass. But we'd have to have a think about how you would phrase a planning condition to require it to be constructed as soon as possible, because that wouldn't be particularly precise. We'd have to perhaps phrase a condition such that the phasing of the exit point is agreed, so that we could then ensure that it is carried out at a certain point of the build. I think that's probably the best way to do it, rather than something as soon as possible, which would be very difficult to enforce.
And the members minded to support this with that condition? Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be sensible for that exit onto Hazledine Way to be constructed and operational before the retail and the retail element was open. Looking at the plan there, does that make sense? There's no good doing that after it's open.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the intention that would form the exit to the retail development. and if it's not formed, then that shouldn't be happening, because then you'd have all the traffic coming out to the south, and that defeats the object of having another exit, doesn't it? If you're only bringing it forward at a certain time in the future.
Rosemary?
Yeah, thank you. So on larger developments, in my experience, you usually have the requirement for a new access road at a certain point of occupation. You know, that's a condition of an application often, isn't it? And I just wonder if that could be the case here. So before the retail park opens for trade, perhaps. So what it says in the report is that it should be constructed at the earliest opportunity, which is also probably not very enforceable.
So I'm getting the impression that we're minded to accept this, but that we do want to see a condition, that we delegate to officers to come up with a condition which will ensure that the exit is constructed prior to the opening of the retail, and possibly at a particular point within the occupation of the care home as well. Are we content to give that over to officers to come up with such a condition? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I knew there was something, and I'm just looking back. I'll go back to front there. That's why I didn't get to it. Condition 4. Prior to the commencement for the development of that's the care home, part A, and part B is phase 2 of the development should be carried out in accordance with the engineering details of the egress onto Hazledine Way. It shall not be brought into use until these approved accesses and egress have been fully constructed. So yeah, it's in there already.
Thank you. I don't wish to encourage random contributions to the floor, but very helpful. Thank you. No, very good. Okay, so with that resolved, are we minded to approve this? Can I see a proposal? Yeah, happy to propose that. I'm happy to second that for acceptance. Can I see a vote? Thank you. That's unanimously accepted. Thank you very much. Okay, so we move on to item 7, field adjoining Langby. I will probably say this wrong. Sodyllt Bank, Ellesmere Road, Ellesmere, Shropshire, 25002448 full. Changes of the use of agricultural land to residential caravan site for 1 traveller family to include access and drainage.
Chairman, I need to remove myself, but I do wish to.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course. Do we have 2 members involved in this?
Yes, I move to remove myself as well.
Very much.
Thank you, Chair. See, it's an application for a single gypsy site on the end of a linear row of properties, as you can see there. The red line denotes the application site. At the moment, on that plan, you can just make out the existing stable block, which the applicant uses for their business at present. Next slide, please. You can see there, the green section is what will be the gypsy pitch. And that will comprise of the siting of 1 static caravan and also the amenity block, which will contain sort of a kitchen and a day room. The access into the site is already there. To the north, you can see an existing detached house, and then beyond that, there's the linear row of the properties. Next slide, please. That's an example of the type of static caravan that the applicant is proposing to site on the site. Next slide, please. And that is the amenity block and the facilities that it contains within it. That will be sited in the approximate position of the existing stable block. Next slide, please. Some photos of the site. So this is taken looking up towards the access into the site. On the left hand side you can see the mature hedgerow. That is the section of hedgerow that would need to be removed and replanted to facilitate the visibility displays from the access. Next slide please. That's looking in the opposite direction down the road towards St Martin's, and again that the adjoining house is the one you can see on that picture there. Next slide please. This is the existing access into the site, currently used by the applicant to access the stable block, which he keeps his equipment and tools in association with his business. And then the neighbouring house you can just make out to the right hand side of that photo. Next slide please. And this is the site itself, taken from the gate that we just saw in the previous photo. Again, stable block, that is where the amenity block will be sited, and then the static caravan will be between that and what's currently the hedge. Next slide, please. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions that are set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have several speakers. The first speaker is Nick Scott. So Nick, you have 3 minutes from when you begin. If you press the right hand button, it should light up as red. I'll see if it's lit up.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Nick Scott. I live in Sodyllt and respectfully ask you reject this planning application for the following reasons. Our first concern is on sustainability grounds. We understand sustainable development is the central principle underpinning the planning system. We note the committee report references the last planning application on the site, advising that it was refused by the council in 2015, however fails to mention the main reason for the refusal was that the proposal was not considered to represent sustainable development due to the site's location. The committee report goes on to reference the Coton Appeal decision, highlighting that policy CS12 supports development of gypsy and traveller sites close to specified settlements. The meaning of the word close is not defined. It usually means adjoining a defined development boundary. In the Coton case, the inspector noted that Tilstock was within 1.6 kilometres. Importantly, there was a bus service on a nearby road and a railway station at Prees. The inspector concluded the development provides an appropriate level of accessibility by means other than the car. In contrast, the proposed site in Sodyllt is over 3.5 kilometres from St Martin's and 4.2 from Overton, more than double the distance of the Coton Appeal scheme. Unlike Coton, there is no bus service nearby and no pavements for safe pedestrian travel. The nearest railway station is in Gabowen, 7.6 miles away. The distances are significantly greater than the Coton Appeal and would appear to reinforce the previous planning decision that Sodyllt is not a sustainable location. Our second concern relates to highways. In this respect, we note the applicant does not keep horses on the site, nor does he access it regularly for business use. If permitted, the application will therefore significantly intensify the use on the site. The applicant suggests that speeds on the road are no more than 50 miles per hour. However, no evidence has been provided to support this statement. Our experience is that traffic travels close to 60 miles per hour. This is reflected in 10 accidents being recorded on the roadway within the last 10 years. The applicant's plans show a visibility display which falls short of the 215 metres that should be required. We are concerned the intensification of use, coupled with inadequate visibility display, will compromise highway safety. Our third concern relates to ecology. The ponds around the site are claimed to be dry. They're not. I know the ponds well, and they do not dry out during the winter period. And finally, the cesspit proposals for drainage are an unsustainable solution, which are illegal in some parts of the UK and a last resort elsewhere. Due to these concerns, I'd ask the committee to refuse this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good timing. Second speaker is Councillor Sharon Jackson. You have 3 minutes and it will begin once you start talking. Sorry, could you just switch your microphone on?
That's it. So I'm for Ellesmere Rural Parish Council, and we're standing by our original comments that we made and that you can see. We can't see the difference that there is from the dwelling to the from change of agricultural land to a caravan. So our comments are the same for both. Yeah. The house was refused by Shropshire Council, but we said we would consider a 106 if that came before us. As we said in our comments about the ecology reports, it lacks detail, and especially on the ponds that have dried up, we've still seen no photographic evidence of that, and we have asked for that, but we've seen nothing. And we also noted that the area of development falls outside the development boundary. And these were the points that were raised for the refusal on the original application. Yeah. And our constituents, they oppose the planning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
We will take the comments from the officers afterwards.
Oh, okay.
More speakers, thank you. So it's now local members. I believe 2 local members are planning to speak, but you do have 5 minutes to share. So it's up to you how you sort that out. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carl Riley, St Martin's Division. I've spoken with both the applicant and residents of Sodyllt Bank regarding the planning application. It was anticipated at the time of the adoption of the core strategy that gypsy and traveller sites would be allocated through the Sodyllt plan. However, following further evidence and examination, the Sodyllt plan adopted did not include any such site allocations. Policy CS12 gypsy and traveller provision does state that all sites must comply with the requirements of policy CS6 sustainability and the critical infrastructure provision of policy CS9. In the report, the planning officer only mentioned CS9 once, which is only a direct reference to the policy, suggesting that the application does not meet the requirements of the policy. CS6 was mentioned 6 times, 3 of which are a direct reference to the policy, and 3 are reference to the requirements of those being layout, scale, impact on landscape, impact on residential amenity and highways. Overall, the planning officer considered that the scheme will have little impact on the rural landscape given the scale, design and proposed development. Whilst there are no other similar sites nearby, the site will be seen within context of the other built developments and will not appear isolated or obtrusive. I find it very difficult to agree that a static caravan or a caravan placed at the end of a row of 17 market houses in a small hamlet will not appear isolated and obtrusive, and certainly not in context of the other buildings. In order for the application to meet the requirement of highways, the applicant has presented more detail on the access. It is noted that whilst it meets the requirements, it was regrettable that the front hedgerow will now be lost. Policy CS6 requires the application must incorporate super design and screening. I don't believe the application is meeting the screening requirements of the policy, and the site will be clearly visible from the roadside, the passing public, as well as the residents of Sodyllt Bank. For clarity and transparency, I should mention that CS12 is mentioned 21 times in a report, suggesting that the application does meet the requirements of that policy. The planning inspectorate often refers to Colton Peel as a similar case. I stress to the committee, each planning application must be assessed on its own merits, particularly when the reference case lies outside division and does not reflect the specific context of Sodyllt Bank. Therefore, I feel that the planning committee should not be influencing the decision based on the recommendations of the Colton appeal. As an elected county councillor for the division of St Martin's, I wish to be transparent as possibly as I can, and regarding this application and any other application that was presented to the committee in the future. I feel I've represented the residents on fact through policy and not hearsay, However, I do feel that the applicant, who also lives in Division of St Martin's, should also have some sort of representation. Having spoken to the applicant, it is clear why this application is needed. The application is currently living in the caravan in the garden of a relative's house in St Martin's. The said relative is carrying out extensive work on the house, which can be clearly seen from the roadside when driving past. For the relative to continue these works, the applicant needs to also move away from the property. The applicant has strong ties to the village of St Martin's and is highly regarded as a local businessman running a very well-regarded tree surgeon and garden landscaping business. The application also has a young family, and like any other young, hard-working family, wants to get themselves on the property ladder. The applicant is very fortunate to own this beautiful piece of land, and I do feel it should be used to its full potential. Therefore, if this application had been for a house or bungalow, I would have supported the application subject to any requirements. If the applicant does not get the desired outcome today, I would like to offer my services to County Council and work with residents and the applicant to present a planning application for a house or bungalow on the land, which would fit in the current landscape context and any other buildings in the area. To conclude, given the facts that have been presented to me, and I feel it is current form of the application, it is not right for a hamlet nor residents of Sodyllt Bank, I suggest that this application be rejected. If the application is later to apply for planning for a house and given complex to the case, I would recommend that the application would go to committee rather than delegated authority. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the final speaker is Kelly Griffiths, I believe. Yes, thank you.
Mr Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak in support of this application for Mr and Mrs Roberts and their young family. Mr and Mrs Roberts are currently staying with family nearby, however are expecting their second child in August and their young daughter's just had major surgery. Therefore, the reason for this planned application is to allow this young family to have their own space. The family are of Gypsy heritage, recognised under the Equality Act 2010 as a protected ethnic group. They require a permanent lawful base to raise their children, access healthcare and education, continue contributing to the local economy, with Mr Roberts operating a tree surgery business within the local area. Footnote 8 of the NPPF indicates that where a council cannot demonstrate a 5-year land supply of deliverable housing sites, planning policies will be considered out of date. It's also important to note that the decision on this application must comply with the Human Rights Act Article 8 and the Public Sector Equality Duty under the Equality Act 2010, as well as ensuring the best interests of the children are prioritised. The proposed development is modest in scale for one static caravan, an amenity building and associated hardstanding, with the existing access upgraded and improved. We've worked closely with all relevant statutory consultees, being drainage, highways, ecology, Gypsy liaison and planning policy, who all support the application and have no objection. It should also be noted that the biodiversity net gain criteria has been met, where the habitat and biodiversity values will be increased following proposals. This includes new hedgerows adjacent to the existing properties and along the roadside. All drainage concerns have also been suitably addressed, and it shall be noted that most of the existing dwellings within the vicinity have inadequate drainage running to dry ditches. The committee is required to have due regard in the need to eliminate unlawful discrimination, advance equality of opportunity and foster good relations between people with protected characteristics and others. Refusing an application that addresses an unmet accommodation need for a protected ethnic group risks breaching these duties. Courts have repeatedly confirmed that equality considerations are a material planning consideration, particularly for traveller sites. The applicant accepts the proposed conditions to limit the site to a single family, maintain landscaping, ensure visual containment and return the land to its former condition if vacated. These measures ensure that the development remains low impact and appropriately managed. This is an application that meets a recognised and pressing local need, supports the rights and welfare of a protected ethnic group and will deliver minimal visual or environmental impact. I respectfully urge the members to support the professional officer's recommendations and approve this application, upholding not only your planning policies but your statutory equality and human rights obligations. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Officers, any comments on any of the presentations?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously the issue of sustainable development was brought up early on in the representations made. The committee report does address the issue of the proximity to local facilities, and quite rightly it does refer to a previous appeal decision on a different site in Coaton. The contents of that are material because it gave an interpretation as to what is considered to be a reasonable distance to services and facilities. The inspector at that time identified that reasonable accessibility could include the ability to access day-to-day services, including bus and railway links, within a short drive. So it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be on the doorstep, but they have to be easily accessible. As we note in this one, the distance to St Martin's is short, where there is services and facilities, bus service, etc. In terms of highways and ecology comments, the application has been considered by the council's highways officer and ecologist respectively. They've both made no objection subject to conditions being added. The issue with the cesspit, I think it's acknowledged that a cesspit is the least preferred option, but the applicant has gone through the process of identifying other options on why they've had to dismiss those. The installation of a cesspit would need building regulations approval, and ultimately, like any drainage system, it needs to be maintained and managed in the long term. We touched upon that quite rightly, the council does not have a 5-year supply of deliverable sites at the moment for gypsy sites, and the effect of that is that paragraph 11 of the MPPF is engaged, where there's the policy presumption in favour, where it's necessary, where it sets out that the application should be approved unless adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Obviously, the benefits in this case is the provision of a gypsy site, which helps move towards making sure there's enough provision within the county. It's it for me for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to members of the committee. Yes.
Let's come back to what you said. You mentioned the word.
Introduce yourself again.
Oh, sorry, Andy Davis, St Oswald's. You mentioned a second ago for a gypsy site. The application is for one static caravan. Am I correct?
It's for one pitch.
One pitch.
So yes, it's the use of the land that they're applying for, and by using that land, they can site a static caravan, and also siting of a touring caravan, which is the normal approach for gypsy pitches, as well as the amenity building.
So it's one site it's one pitch we're actually referring to here, rather. May I ask, how large is the plot of land that's going on? Just under an acre.
Can you keep the debate to the officers, please?
So I guess I apologise. Sorry. The next thing, you showed a hedgerow going across. How much of that hedgerow would need to be removed? Because if you should access to vehicle access with 5 bar gates, and then you showed the whole hedge. How much of the hedge is actually being removed? It's the next one. That's it. That's the house at the end. So access via the current driveway into the property would not be viable.
Yeah, the existing access visibility is compromised by the existing hedge, but obviously that's a historic situation. So obviously by introducing a dwelling on there, or a residential use on there, I should say, increases the number of vehicle movements to and fro. So it's a measure of trying to get an improved access over the current situation.
So you'd expect some of that hedge to be removed then in order to create another access to it?
Yeah, colleague just has managed to measure it and believes it's about 100 metres of hedgerow.
So 100 metres would need to be removed?
Yeah.
If that's what I'm guessing, yeah. That's yeah, so this display crosses the hedgerow at 20. The whole display is 120. So.
Yeah. Okay. So
sorry,
you happy with that?
I do apologise. So is the whole 120 metres being removed?
100 metres of it.
100 metres is
yeah.
removed.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is being replaced. Yeah.
There's a plan of condition on there to make sure that
That's good. Thanks, clarifying. Thank you.
Okay. Any other members? Yes.
I know, Councillor Potter Lowton, the settlement is not defined as either a hub or a cluster. So I presume the previous application was for an open market dwelling, which was refused. And so what would the obvious option would be a local need section 106 dwelling, which is notoriously difficult to get, because you have to demonstrate local connection, you have to demonstrate adjacent to or within a named settlement. Are those criteria measured against this, which is effectively another dwelling, albeit temporary dwellings?
Yeah, the same to a degree, the same constraints apply. Firstly, the applicant having to demonstrate that they are of gypsy heritage, which they have done. So the site, the application as proposed, would only be able to be occupied by someone that meets the definition of a gypsy. That definition is set out in the report, and that's a definition set out in government policy. So, yeah, it's the same constraints apply.
Okay. So I had a couple of comments myself. So first of all, just with regard to these are comments really with regard to the Coton case. I must say I found that compelling in terms of the arguments around access and to facilities. That seemed a reasonable argument, and clearly it was one which convinced the planning inspectors. And we'd be, I think, in real danger if we were to ignore that precedent. And then secondly, just in terms of the case put around policy CS12 that supports this exception site effectively for a gypsy family, for all sorts of reasons. My reading of the paperwork suggests that again is quite compelling. So I'm certainly minded to support this application. Any other comments from the floor? Yes.
Will I come back onto the cesspit, which you mentioned, which nowadays is not a common thing to actually install? Have other options been considered, so as septic tanks?
Yeah, the first preference is obviously a mains drainage system. There's no mains here, then treatment plants followed by septic tanks, and then kind of cesspit is the last option. It's to do with the ground conditions and being able to get a soakaway drainage field in. It is the top layer is clay, which obviously makes a drainage field not possible. The applicant has provided details of all the percolation tests to do that, which is proved and demonstrated that those preferred systems will not function on this site.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other comments? Yes.
Councillor Epps, a question for the officers. So the site in question has not been identified development in the SAMDEV plan. So to what extent, to what weight does the SAMDEV plan have or hold in future developments?
In respect of gypsy sites, or I mean, government policy, and that's set out in the planning policy for traveller sites document, which is sort of appended to the MPPF. That allows for gypsy sites in countryside locations. It's ideally the preferred option is next to settlements and not isolated. So obviously in that respect, we're kind of satisfying that because we are next to other adjoining development. It's not completely out in the sticks and completely isolated. So in terms of the SAMDEV plan, that's primarily for permanent settled housing rather than gypsy sites, because gypsy sites are largely determined by CS6 and the government policy.
Any other comments? Okay. Looking for any proposals. As chair, I will propose that we go with the officer recommendation and approve this.
Councillor Groves, I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proposals? No, in that case, I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Thanks very much. That's approved. Thank you. If people want to leave before the next item, feel free to do so. We can give you a breather. Okay, thank you. So we shall move on to item 8, land north of Mitten Oak Road, Shrewsbury. Yeah, the reason I read the description, by the way, is just that's the practice we do on the town council. So I'll just stick to doing that for now, and then we can talk about it later. So this is land north of Mitten Oak Road, Shrewsbury, 2402808. Outline hybrid planning application for residential development of up to 400 dwellings and 80-bed care home. Use class C2, access footpaths and cycleways, public open space, landscaping, associated drainage and development infrastructure, comprising a full application for 102 dwellings, 80-bed care home, access from Mitten Oak Road, footpath, cycleways, public open space, landscaping and associated development infrastructure, and outline application, all matters reserved, for up to 298 dwellings, access, footpaths, cycleways, public open space, landscaping and associated development infrastructure.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just read that again because I always do. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so yes, this is the application site boundary. It's a part full application and part outline application, which will be brought forward in 4 phases. So you can see it's to the southwest of the built-up area of Shrewsbury, with the A5 to the west and Mitten Oak Road to the south. Next one, please. Again, at the extent of the red line boundary. Next one, please. So you can see the 2 different elements. Then the full application, which is the detailed application that we have, is to the southeast, and then the other 3 phases are in the pinky area to the northwest of that. So the detailed matters we're looking at are the full element. The outline element is just to secure the principle of the development of the whole of the site for 400 houses, rather than providing or seeking approval of the details of those at this stage. Next one, please. So this is the detailed element proposed of the full element. You can see the proposed access to the southeast, which provides like a semicircular entrance way of the house's arrangement, with the proposed road hierarchy, which includes primary roads throughout the site, secondary roads, and some cul-de-sacs. And you can see the open spaces as well in green. A attenuation pond at the northeastern side of the site, and a care home, an 80-bed care home on the southwestern side of the site as well, with a noise attenuation bund right at the southwestern corner there. Next one, please. This is a example of the street scenes taken through various cross sections of the site, to showing the variety of different house types, the designs and the different features. Next one, please. There's multiple different house designs proposed throughout the site. I've just put up a selection of different house types here. Will be a combination of semi-detached and detached dwellings, 1 to 4 bedroom houses. This one's got a bay window. Next one, please. The semi-detached example. Next one. A detached example. Next one. Next one. And this is the proposed elevations and plan of the care home. Next one. And again. This draws out a little bit more the public open space being proposed for the site, and you'll see in the report that the open space being provided is an over provision by approximately 17% on what our policies would be seeking on a development of this scale. You can see there are pockets of different areas of open space with footpaths linking each one in the light blue colour. The open space includes informal areas of recreation and also more formal play areas as well. You can point out the one just to the east of the care home, and then one just to the right hand side of the that's it, with the dark brown road pattern. Next one, please. This is a I'll show you a photograph of the site later on, but this is a proposed hedge removal and retention plan. You can see there'll be a number of trees taken out from the road frontage to accommodate the visibility display, which would include the removal of some trees and hedgerow, and then the replanting of that hedgerow set back further into the site. And the larger trees, which are across the whole of the site, will be mainly retained, but then you can see there are some red trees there being proposed for removal. Next one, please. There's a public right-of-way that crosses the site on the eastern side. This will be accommodated within the designs, but on a slightly different route. And then there'll be different additional paths throughout the site as well to link to the different parts of the site, including cycleways as well, to provide improved connectivity from one side to the other, and also to link into surrounding residential areas to the east. Next one. It's proposed different elements of the street hierarchy with the different types of access, provision and widths of the roads throughout the site. Next one. The initial access proposals include a right turn ghost island arrangement, which is shown in the committee report. Initially until the 100th dwelling has been constructed, and at which point this will be upgraded to a signalised junction from Mitten Oak Road. Next one. This is the signalised junction arrangement, which will be provided further into the phasing of the site. Next one. This proposes the temporary construction point, which will be part of the initial development works. Next one. And this is just one photo of the site at present, which is a large, mainly a large field with some hedgerows and some mature trees across the site, which, as you've seen, the larger trees will be retained within the development. The details of the application in the report, I'm not going to go through them again now, but in terms of the officer assessment, the application's been developed over the course of pre-app discussions and a multiple consultation process over a number of months. This include a review of the application with a design review panel as well, and as I say, detailed discussions with consultees and officers. Consider that we've now got to the point where we've got a well-designed scheme. The applicants engaged positively throughout the process in trying to overcome any recommendations and concerns that have been raised. There are a number of benefits proposed to the proposal in terms of its layout and the over provision of affordable housing and open space, for example, and also a number of financial contributions which have been negotiated to ensure that the development is acceptable. You'll note in the plan, in the report, that the proposal is contrary to the development plan in that it's not an allocated site. However, it was proposed to be allocated as part of our draft plan. The current planning policy situation has changed somewhat, as you'll be aware, over the last few months. However, we are giving some weight to the evidence base behind the fact that it ended up being a draft allocation. The national planning policy requires that in the circumstances that we have where there is no 5-year housing land supply, that we grant the development unless adverse impacts outweigh the benefits. In this particular case, we don't feel that that is the case. Therefore, we recommend that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers. We have, first of all, David Kilby. So David, if you press the right hand button, red light should come on, and then you'll have 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Shropshire Playing Fields Association believe this proposed residential development is contrary to Shropshire Council's adopted development plan. The importance of play is recognised and protected internationally by the United Nations Convention, the Rights of the Child, Article 31 of the Convention. It is our understanding that neither Shropshire Council or Shrewsbury Town Council have a play policy or play strategy to help inform officers or members today. It appears 2 million in SIL money from this development will be spent on education, road improvements and active travel, but nothing on play or recreation. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Play is not just about children, laps or leaps for 2-3-year-olds. Play includes the whole community, be it helping those with dementia, addictions, business enterprises, tourism, or even developments like the old Shelton Hospital, with its now vibrant cricket, bowls, football and social club, providing the glue for that community. Play is a vital part of physical health, mental well-being, social development and community building. Failure to promote and prioritise play in our neighbourhoods risks building a community that is less healthy, less connected and less prepared for the future. Investing in play is investing in our people, our children, our families and our collective well-being. We should be working together to make sure every member of our community has the chance to move, connect, learn and grow through play. Charles Darwin was a collector, an explorer, an administrator. Key characteristics of play, nurtured and inspired as a young person by a positive play environment here in Shrewsbury. Mary Webb was inspired creatively by the natural rural environment here in the heart of Shropshire. England goalkeeper Joe Hart was a competitor, physically active, who benefited from sports fields like Shorncliffe Drive, Oxon Park, Shelton, Meal and Oxon School Fields. A play policy, a play strategy would help inform you, the officers, members and applicant to plan for future generations in a holistic, sustainable way for the benefit of everyone. Why does Shropshire Council and Shrewsbury Town Council not have a play policy or play strategy in place as a matter of priority? Simple question. It could be your strength if the benefits and value of play were fully understood or listened to. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is the agent, I believe, Robert Perrins. Thank you. So once again, you have pressed the button, the red light comes on, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and fellow committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to address this afternoon's meeting. My name is Rob Perrins and I'm the Technical Director for Shropshire Homes Limited. Members will have read in detail the report of your planning officers recommending that planning permission is granted. and will be aware that it was an allocated site in the local plan review. This hybrid application, the first phase in detail in delivering 102 dwellings plus 80-bed care home, is created in a way that is sensitive of its setting and incorporates key landscape features into its design that feed into the remaining development parcels for up to a further 298 new homes. The scheme before you today follows close work with your officers in Design Panel Midlands, the Council's own design consultant. National Highways have played an important role in assessing the development and how it will integrate with the strategic road network, and have no objections to the development. The scheme accords with both current and emerging planning policy requirements to ensure we at least meet policy and in areas exceed them with affordable housing and biodiversity net gain, both in excess of the policy requirements. We have worked closely with the Council's green infrastructure and landscape officers. Open space policy provision on the first development phase requires 11,400 square metres of open space, yet delivers an over provision of 1,985 square metres, roughly equal to the area of a junior football pitch. In considering the requirements of the draft allocation, we are compliant with the guidelines following production of a suitable master plan through consultation with the public and the Shropshire Council. The scheme will deliver a quality design and provides a suitable housing mix, including part-time adaptable and disability compliant dwellings and specialist accommodation. The design has also been reviewed by Design Midlands on behalf of the Council. There are new pedestrian cycle links within the site and from it to provide links to the surrounding roads, plus new pedestrian crossing facilities. Either on-site or off-site contributions to the delivery of additional playing pitch provision can be provided through the use of SIL monies. We have an over provision of open space on phase 1, as mentioned earlier. The scheme is making its full level of SIL contributions, over £2 million, as well. In addition, Section 106 contributions to health, passenger transport and sustainable travel of over £1.3 million to ensure the scheme properly mitigates for and supports local infrastructure. There are no technical objections to the application, and the planning policy team have no objections on the principle or the scale of development of the site. We're a locally based housing developer and employ local people and contractors to build our developments, and genuinely hope members are minded to vote in accordance with your office's recommendation to approve the scheme, subject to the conclusion of Section 106 and associated conditions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Any comments from officers? No comments from officers. Questions from members? Ed.
I've got 3 points noted down for this application. I think one has been covered off by the public speaker around the provision, generally for leisure activities. Another application in the Bicton Heath area, which borders my division. I've been talking to the developer there because there's a lack of sort of play equipment, and also with all the developments in the Sue West, I think I'm saying Sue West, isn't it? That area around Shrewsbury, it's putting more pressure on the existing facilities in the rural area, which I represent, bordering it, in terms of for people's leisure activities. I appreciate there's a over provision of open space. A lot of that open space is very nice, sort of green area, but it's not overly versatile for potential leisure activities. The second thing is around, I see the Section 106 provision for health and money for that. So again, we all know the increasing pressure on GP surgeries, particularly in the Shrewsbury Town area, which services the rural hinterland as well, particularly in the Bicton and east of Yockleton, for my residents there. So again, it's how do we ensure that Section 106 money is used quickly? Because we have areas in the county where provision has been made for health. The houses have been built for sort of 10 years and still no improvements have been made to providing access to healthcare, particularly GP surgeries. And I also, finally, I note there's a contribution within SIL for local and strategic road improvements. And I'm conscious, and I know Highways England haven't objected, but I'm also conscious of the cumulative impact of developments in the Sue West area of traffic moving east up the A5, particularly on Dobbies roundabout, the pressure there. I travel from my ward of Lowton through to Dobbies, turn right towards Church Stretton every day to go to work. And, the tailbacks there and the pressure, and obviously the more houses we build in that part of town, the obvious way out out to access for work and leisure and everything is along the A5 and the pressure it puts on, particularly Dobby's roundabout. Is there any specific plan for how that money for strategic local road improvements would be made?
You, Ed, think from the officer on that one?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the first point about leisure space, I'll just reiterate that the proposal does put forward significant additional open space provision than policy would indicate would be required, 17%. The policy MD2 sets out that should cover a range of different types of open space to provide for different demands, and this particular proposal includes informal open space. It doesn't have to necessarily do anything. It just needs to be something which provides a level of amenity for people that is not built development, so that if you want to walk your dog or just sit on a bench or something, that's still a element of open space which has value. Other elements of the open space being provided include 2 play areas, one which is for younger children, 2 to 3 year olds, and another one which is a more high level equipped one, which is perhaps got more play equipment. So these different elements of open space provide different functions throughout the site, including the pathways and the linkages and the like. So it's providing a range of different types, which is fitted onto a development in excess of what we would expect development of this type to be providing. We can perhaps look at whether there needed to be an extra play area, for example, but then that would be at the expense of something else. Otherwise, it would have to be providing even more open space than would be required over and above the 17% additional that they are providing. The second point was health. Yes, the health matter is that contribution has been agreed at £791,000. That has been recommended by the Integrated Care Board. That has been fully costed by them in terms of what impacts the proposal would have in terms of the residential dwellings and also the care home in the local area. The expectation is that that would provide for infrastructure improvements within the local area, and the Integrated Care Board would want to see that being spent as soon as possible, and there will be a demand being put through the Section 106 agreement that money is allocated as soon as possible. The third one, in terms of the local road improvements, this is a matter that is being provided through the SIL payments, and the SIL payments are effectively the mechanism by which monies can be put into a pot and paid for in combination with other developments, for example, that are being SIL liable for schemes which have priorities, and the National Highways will have their own priorities in terms of what can be achieved and should be achieved in that local area, and that significant amount of money of £450,000 will help towards that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes.
Just on I hear what you're saying about, I appreciate the play areas, but I think often with developments, a lot of the open spaces focus to the pathways and the peripheries and the edges and the awkward bits that can't be developed. And often there is a lack of somewhere people could have a good kickabout. As we've heard mentioned that they equates to a small junior football pitch, but there's very little area, perhaps on many of the new developments, that actual community open space can happen. One of my communities has what they call the Millennium Green, which is a big open space which is hugely used, but it is concentrated in a big area. And I think sometimes, I know there's no provision, yes, we've got play areas, but we end up using the allocation of open space on peripheries, the walkways, the routes, the barriers, the nice places to sit and walk your dog. But for actual bringing people together, sometimes there is a bit of a lack of space. That's just my point. But I understand there's an open provision, and it meets what's needed.
Yeah, just on that point, and yeah, it's a very good point. What I would say, there's 3 further phases, of course, as well, which will come forward as part of the reserve matters, and the detailed elements of those haven't been agreed as yet. And there would be, for the further 300 houses.
Greg was next, and then Brian.
So section 6.5.3 with regards to archaeological investigation work to continue. In the past, what planning conditions have been imposed on similar developments in the Shrewsbury area?
Is a standard condition which covers the requirement to ensure that archaeological pre-development work is undertaken in accordance with a written scheme of investigation, and then the archaeologist will go onto the site, will carry out some evaluation, investigation, trenching work, for example, and then report back of any findings, and that can be helped to understand, the local archaeological context, and some pre evaluation work has been carried out to understand what the level of archaeological interest is likely to be, and that informs the type of evaluation work which will then be carried out before you start to do your soil stripping and the like. But that is a condition 7 is a standard condition that we use on all of these types of developments.
Thank you. Brian?
Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the diagram 637, the open space proposals. I'm looking, I've zoomed into this drawing, and I can see a lot of tightly packed houses, buildings, the care development home. And yes, there are a few green fields, green areas in there, mostly covered by trees. You talk about putting money aside for future development, perhaps in certain phases to follow. Can you give us assurances that these sums of money that you say might be put aside to help develop? Because I take great sympathy with the gentleman who spoke about play and the advancement of play for youngsters, and there will be plenty on this site. But all I see are roads and pathways and houses and trees and a few green areas. I hope that in the next phase there will be room for more play areas, more green areas to make use of this fine land. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll keep going and then take yes. Are there assurances?
There are no assurances at this stage, because those future phases are only being proposed in outline, so we're only seeking permission for the acceptability, the principle of the development of those future phases. The actual details of how they would be built out in terms of, densities, location and type of open space would be dealt with at a later stage of approval, the reserved matters approval. So we can't give assurances at this stage. We have there was a plan that was shown to show an indicative. I don't know whether we can go back, Tim.
Can I just come back to that, Mr. Chair? Very briefly, you've assured us that large sums of money would be put aside for future phases in this development, or
not
no, I misunderstood.
No,
what were the large sums of money, the 90,000 you were talking about putting one side?
Well, these
for future development.
These are in the report at section 6.9, which sets out what the financial contributions would be, and have been agreed to make the development acceptable. Some of those will be required as part of the SIL payment, which every registered development needs to pay. Other ones have been negotiated in particular for this particular scheme to cover.
Where are those funds held? In the funds that you're talking about, the money, where are these funds held?
They will be secured through, they'll be paid to the council as part through the section 106 agreement process, and then they will be in that agreement. It will set out what the funds are for, and timescale by which they need to be paid, for example, and which departments would get allocated those funds. For example, the health contribution would be allocated for, improvement to health infrastructure, and through the ICB, the travel plan monitoring contribution would be, allocated to the council's highways team to assist with their work to ensure that the travel plan meets its aims.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
But just to carry on, just this shows the three further phases in the pinky areas, and that's only very indicative. We're not seeking approval for that today. We're just, the applicants have just shown that to indicate how the site could be built out. And you can see that there is plenty of opportunity to, shuffle around, road infrastructure and location of housing and open space provision and the type of open space as well. It doesn't have to be another play area. It could be a field where you can have a kick around, for example. We just haven't agreed that level of detail yet, and that'll be as part of the reserve matters approval.
Thank you. I think it's Adam and then Rosemary. Oh, sorry, Adam, and yes, you did indicate before. So Adam, then Gary, then Rosemary. Yep.
Andy Davis, just one or two questions. What size plot are we talking of here for the whole of this development? How many acres, hectares?
It's a 19-hectare site in total.
Right, so if I didn't mishear what the gentleman said, but for the amount of green spaces, it's the size of a junior school's football pitch. In total, 4 green spaces for this site. Am I right? Well, I think that's the way it's described.
So the overall site is 19 hectares,
right.
and phase 1 would be obviously an element of that. Which
sure, but of green space, I think the gentleman said it's. Am I correct? It's for total green space. It's the site of the primary school's football field, which is what I believe I heard.
I think what the misunderstanding is, I think the size of the over provision. So there's the amount that we need plus that size. This isn't that's all of it.
Sorry, I don't understand.
So what's been said is that there is the open space that we want.
Yes.
There's an over provision, and the over provision is the size of the football pitch. I think that's, yeah.
Sure, that's fine. A second point is we talk about school places yet again. Do I assume that those schools have not been approached whether they've got capacity for those children? Because it's very built up around those areas now. And I know school places are becoming rather limited.
I think what we have to do here is consider what is in front of us. As the planning department, we go to our education colleagues. Yeah. They do the maths, they do the working out. It's not for us to go to the schools and to do that. So by the time it gets to committee, your officers will have done that work, both in education and in planning, and we inform each other. So what education will have done is will have come to us, and I'll be honest, in this case, there's been quite a lot of internal conversation because we want to be really clear about what the methodology is going forward. I wouldn't think that the methodology could be questioned through planning committee. So I think this is what we've arrived at with our colleagues in education, and that's what officers feel will mean that the payment of that money is what is necessary to make it acceptable in planning terms. It's a really difficult balance.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, so
really confusing.
Fine. So the education department have actually gone to the schools, good faith, to ask whether they've got capacity. That's our understanding of it then.
And that's a matter for them, councillor, to be honest. I think how education want to arrive at this figure that they ask the developer for is a matter for education. It is not a matter for planning officers or the planning committee to go underneath those figures.
Oh, sure, that's fine.
Through planning committee. So it is something we're certainly looking at, and if you want to, you want to ask me that separately, I'm perfectly happy to have a look into this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gary.
Thank you, Councillor Groves. Just for clarification, because I might have missed it earlier in a previous application we looked at, what's the calculation for car parking spaces to bedrooms of the care home? Is there a calculation?
There's no, we don't have a standard that we need to meet. It's a matter for each individual operator to put forward a provision that they think would work for their particular type of development, which will be based upon their particular levels of experience, because they obviously don't want to be under providing, because then that's going to put pressure on other elements of the development. But there's no fixed standard that the council has to say a care home needs, you know, this level of car parking.
Okay, because I noticed on the previous one, before it was changed, that was for an 80-bedroom care home with 35 car parking spaces, which, to be honest, I thought wasn't enough anyway. This one is again for an 80-bedroom care home, but has got, I think it's 29 spaces, and presumably those spaces are for visitors. There may even be some residents that use a space, and staff as well.
Correct, it'll be for staff, visitors, and occupants.
Okay. Thank you.
I think it's Rosemary, and then it's you. Yeah.
Rosemary Dartlow, Column and Sutton. Thanks very much for this. When I first looked at this, I expected it to be another car-dependent development. So thank you to everyone who's made that into something very different, with a substantial public transport and active travel payments, let's say, that will bring forth good benefits for people who do live there. I'm also pleased to see that there's more affordable homes than are absolutely required, so that's good. A couple of questions about, I know that the attenuation pond, or a pool, the first one, am I right in saying that's within one of the flood risk zones? And is that a concern? Should that be located slightly out of the flood zone? I'm not sure. I see that there's a second one on the larger, you know, on the outline area as well. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, while I appreciate that the open space is larger than that required, Mr. Kilby's words are very compelling, because this is on the edge of town and there's nowhere for the community to meet. If we're looking at 400 homes in the fullness of time, there isn't a place outside for people to meet in any, you know, great number, or nor is there a community hall or any facility like that locally. So that perhaps might be something to consider as well going forward. Thank you.
Chair, yeah, can we go? There's a plan that shows the flood zone. I think it might be the one after. Actually, this one here. Oh no, just before that one. Yeah, the flood zone. You can see there is a watercourse that runs along the northeast boundary of the site, and the flood zone you can see pink hatched there. So it kind of it's adjacent to the attenuation pond, but obviously the attenuation pond can be sized as well to, if it needed to cater for, you know, any floodwaters. That would be a good way of accommodating floodwaters and prevent it from going elsewhere. But it's something that you know, our drainage team have raised no objections to the application, subject to a condition, but they have raised some detailed elements that would need to be agreed as part of a more detailed drainage strategy, and those are that's the level of detail that would need to be dealt with at that stage. Importantly, there's no built development within the flood zone, so we're not taking away any flood zone or increasing the flood risk. But because of the proximity of the drainage pond, it actually might be a benefit for it to be there. In terms of the open space, I can't say much more than we feel that there is a good range of open space being provided at the site. Of course, it would be nice to provide other elements as well, but then something else would have to give. we wouldn't. We're over providing at the moment. If we're expecting a developer to provide something else, then something else, like for example, the number of houses would have to be reduced, or the other elements of open space would have to be reduced. It's difficult to know on this particular phase one how you could fit everything that we would like to see as a development within that. These conversations can be raised at a later date as part of the future phases, but at the moment only the detailed elements we're looking at for phase one.
Thank you, Greg, and then I've got some comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I suppose two questions, or one comment and one question. So with regards to comments going back to the previous conversation about play, the Right Honourable Gentleman outlined some considerable matters, such as the fact there isn't a policy regarding play, and that should be considered future day. But I would just like to remind everyone that play does not necessarily apply to young children. It applies to people my own age, 28, 27, 18. Therefore, gym facilities, outdoor facilities for younger generations should be considered as much as not just cycling, but static as well. And going back to the archaeology, typically when archaeological works take place, if anything is discovered, what happens to the archaeology on site? Is that typically buried, or does it go to the museum for further exhibition?
Yeah, the purpose of the condition is that obviously we don't know what people might find. That's the purpose of the evaluation and the written scheme of investigation, that it covers those types of eventualities, such that if to be able to undertake some investigation work of the land as part of stripping of soils to find out what might be of any archaeological interest, and at that point there'll be provision as to what to do about it. And that is a recording exercise. It's an exercise that can be supervised as well by the archaeology team to ensure that appropriate means are taken in terms of what's found. It's a standard mechanism that developers would follow.
I suppose the reason I brought this conversation up is, suppose it's outside of a remit of planning, but just a concern of mine that typically with archaeological sediment, when it's discovered, a lot of it does not necessarily go into appropriate storage because of lack of capacity. So it's just something, should anything of local interest be discovered, what I wouldn't want is for those items to then be buried, recorded, but buried again when it could potentially be used for further exhibition. So just an outline of the concern.
You. So a couple comments from me. First of all, I think there's a general comment to make about, just in terms of our discussion. This is our first committee of our first meeting of the new committee, and people are rightly sort of taking this opportunity to really sort of dig into some of these issues. But some of these issues are to do with, if you like, what other parts of the council do, rather than the planning decision. But I think perhaps it is something we need to think carefully about in terms of some training and some opportunities to consider some of that. That's a general comment. Just in terms of this application then, I mean, first of all, just based on my experience, I want to say there's a lot of positives here. I'm seeing, over and above provision of green open space, I'm seeing over and above provision of affordable homes, I'm seeing clean heat. These are things that I massively welcome, and I wish that all developers would come forward with schemes which do those things from the get-go. So I think in those terms, what we're looking at is, on balance compared to much of what we see, a very positive scheme. And I'm glad that it's been through consultation around design with design consultants, and we're looking to bring in more strength to our own design code as I understand it. So that's a positive as well. My only comment was with regard to active travel. So I think your officer comment was that on balance you thought that there was good provision. I just wanted some reassurance that met the concerns of Active Travel England under 4.1 on 4. They had some very specific concerns, just really some reassurance that in reaching your judgment that overall there's good provision for active travel. Do you think we've reached the level of provision that Active Travel England would be looking for within the constraints of this development?
Yeah, again, along with discussions with our own highways team and National Highways, we've had meetings with Active Travel with the developers to allow Active Travel to express exactly what they would like to see as part of the development, and they initially did raise an objection to the application, but they've, through working through those concerns, they've now removed that objection. They've now recommended that financial contribution is made to, improvements to, connectivity in the local area, and that has been included in the Section 106 agreement. So we're happy that those concerns have been addressed.
Thank you. Ed? Yeah.
So I'm happy to move for approval, subject to the various conditions delegated to officers. And I just sort of like to say, I know we're going to have more phases coming forward. So, and we've got the developers in the room, so it's useful to just send that message, particularly around communities and bringing communities together around the community centre, the village hall, the larger open space. I think is really important for this sort of development. So I'm happy to move for approval, but just want to send that message.
Thank you. I remember my very first big site when I was first a councillor. I was too late to fight for a community resource, a community room of some sort on the development, frankly. So I think you're quite right to lay that marker down when we're thinking about the future development of this urban extension. Do I see a seconder? Thank you, Rosemary. Do I see any other proposals? In which case I'll put that to the vote to accept the officer recommendation. Those in favour? Yeah. Do we have anybody against? One against? Any abstentions? You abstain. One abstention, one against. Everybody else in favour. Okay, thank you very much. We move on to item 9, appeals and appeal decisions. Who's taking this? Anybody? Yes.
Yeah, nothing really to report on unless anyone's got any specific questions with the
Obviously we're a lot of us quite new to this. Would this process sort of like do for us? Because the impression I got, because there is one on there that I'm not very happy about, but however, the impression I get is absolutely
about the appeals process. I don't know if you want to take that outside of perhaps the live stream. I'm more than happy to answer members' questions, and I think it's really useful to have a feedback session about that. But if you want to get to the end of the meeting, Chair, and then
any specifics on any of that? Those appeals? No. Okay, thank you. In which case we move to item 10. Date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 15th of July, and with that we close the meeting and we can close the live stream.